Today, we are beginning Romeo and Juliet. You may want your book so you can follow along and make notes. The story begins with the chorus. The prologue is delivered by the chorus, and we talked in class about how during the Renaissance there was a resurgence of interest in things from ancient Greece. Ancient Greek dramas included a chorus, which consisted of 12 men who gave long speeches throughout the play. They represented the townspeople, and Shakespeare's chorus in Romeo and Juliet does the same, although usually it's portrayed by just one actor. So the chorus begins by delivering the prologue. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge, break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventured piteous overthrows do with their death bury their parents' strife. The fearful passage of their death-marked love, and the continuance of their parents' rage, which, but their children's end naught could remove, is now the 2 hours' traffic of our stage. The which, if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend. So, what do you notice about this speech? First, we might notice its length. It's fairly short. In fact, it is exactly 14 lines long. Does that set off some bells in your minds? It should. What else is 14 lines? A sonnet. Let's look at the number of syllables in each line. Two households, both alike in dignity. It's 10. It's iambic pentameter. And there's a rhyme scheme. The prologue is actually a sonnet. Shakespeare will use sonnets throughout this play as a part of the dialogue and monologues in order to maybe add some poetry to certain parts of the story. And he begins with the prologue. We can follow the rhyme scheme of a Shakespearean sonnet. A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, G. When we studied sonnets in class, I told you to think of them in terms of building blocks. And the 4-line building blocks in a sonnet are known as quatrains. If you look carefully, the first sentence of this poem is a quatrain. It begins with two households, it ends with unclean. This quatrain talks about the setting for the play. It talks about Verona, which is in Italy, and it talks about there being two households or two families. The two families in question are, of course, the families of Romeo and Juliet. Romeo is a Montague, and Juliet is a Capulet. And if you ever have any trouble remembering which one's which, just remember that Juliet's two names both end the same. Juliet, Capulet, gives it a very sing-songy sound. So the setting includes these two families, which are both alike in dignity, meaning that they are of the same social class, which, remember, when we talked about Renaissance England, again, social class was very important. Even though this is set in Italy, it was produced in Renaissance England, so it has their values. It says that there is an ancient grudge between them, so we know that they are fighting or feuding. And from this ancient grudge, there comes a new mutiny. A mutiny is a fight or an argument. So there's a new fight taking place where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. Of course, the word civil itself can refer to civilization or being civilized. It can also refer to the public in general. So these very civilized people and their family blood is being shed. And this now makes public hands unclean. So that's the first quatrain, which refers to the houses and the setting of the play. The next quatrain also forms a single sentence. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. This term star-crossed refers to this idea of fate, this idea that young people's lives are somehow fated. This idea of fate might be most familiar to you when we talk about the Disney movie Hercules, because most of us have seen that movie, and we know the fates. We know the three old women who weave the thread of life, and they decide when that thread of life is supposed to be cut. And these are figures from Greek mythology, and this idea of fate becomes really important in this play. Remember, Greek mythology, things like that, those were being studied again. So these ideas are coming into play. But this idea that they're star-crossed, that somehow their lives are fated in a bad way, that the stars are set against them, whose misadventures, piteous overthrows do with their death bury their parents' strife. Their parents' strife or their parents' argument cannot be buried. It cannot be gotten rid of except through their children's death. This is the only way to end this fight. So the second quatrain deals with the characters, which are the lovers. And now the last 6 lines of this prologue or poem form another sentence. And this part begins to focus on the play itself. When it says, the fearful passage of their death-marked love and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end naught could remove. So again, nothing else except for their children's death could get rid of their fight, is now the 2 hours traffic of our stage. So the traffic of the stage obviously is the coming and going of the actors, and they are going to act out these things in the forthcoming play. And then they continue, the which, if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend. The word here referring to here in this poem. The details that we've left out in this part of the poem, we are going to pick up and we are going to amend that. We're going to fill in those details through our toil. Toil being our work. Their performance is going to fill in those missing details. So there you have the prologue of Romeo and Juliet. It sets the stage for the entire play with the setting, the characters, and the actor's role in establishing what's going on. But even though the prologue tells us exactly what's going to happen, we know before we ever go to see Romeo and Juliet that they're both going to die. We know that. We probably would know that even if it weren't such an important part of our culture, even if we hadn't heard of it already, because it's a tragedy. And in tragedies, people die. The main characters in tragedies typically end up dead at the end of a play. So we know that going in. So the fact that they tell us this in the chorus really doesn't do any harm. It's just sort of letting us know what the play's about and preparing us for that. And the filling in the details part, that's the fun part. How many times have you gone to a movie where you knew what it was about, you knew what it was going to happen, but you still enjoyed watching it anyway. You still enjoyed filling in the details. So that's the prologue of Romeo and Juliet. We're going to stop there, and then I'll pick up with the beginning of Act 1 in a second video. Thanks.